Roy Clark was the man who made America laugh, the smiling banjo legend from Hee Haw whose charm could lift any room. But when he passed away in 2018, his family uncovered something inside his Tulsa home that stopped them cold. A small, locked closet he had forbidden anyone to open. Not his wife, not his children, not even his closest friends. For decades, it had stayed sealed without explanation, and when they finally found the key, what waited inside wasn't just personal. It was heartbreaking. The closet no one dared to open. Roy Linwood Clark was born in 1933 in Meherrin, Virginia, the middle child of a tobacco farmer and an amateur fiddler. The Clarks had little money, but music was their refuge. Roy learned the guitar by ear, and by 14 he could swap between banjo, mandolin, and fiddle with dizzying precision. By 17 he'd already won national championships and radio contests across the South. Yet even in those early years, people noticed the strange contrast in him. The lively performer whose eyes sometimes seemed distant, as if he carried a private sorrow no stage could erase. When fame came, it came fast. By the late 1950s, Roy was performing on local television, and by the 1960s, he was one of the busiest touring musicians in Nashville. The pressure was relentless. Early morning shows, endless travel, autograph lines that stretched for hours. He said yes to everything, terrified of losing the momentum he'd worked his whole life to build. "If the curtain goes up," he once told a friend, "you go out there smiling, no matter what." But off stage, that smile sometimes slipped. Barbara noticed the mood swings, the exhaustion, and the way he would disappear into his music room late at night. It was there, she later realized, that he hid not just his instruments, but his pain. And deep inside that room stood a narrow wooden door that no one, not even she, was allowed to open. The hidden room and the key. After Roy Clark's death in November 2018, his family began the painful process every family dreads, going through what was left behind. His Tulsa home was filled with memories, gold records, vintage banjos, framed photos with presidents and country legends. Every corner of the house felt like a museum of American music. But tucked away behind stacks of amplifiers in his private music room was that one door. The door Roy had warned everyone to leave alone. For decades, Barbara had respected his wish, believing it was nothing more than a cluttered storage space or a cabinet for fragile instruments. But now, with Roy gone, the silence surrounding it became unbearable. His children searched through drawers, guitar cases, and desk shelves, hoping to find the key. It wasn't until Barbara opened an old red velvet-lined guitar case that she discovered a tiny brass key taped inside the lining, small, dull, and oddly heavy. When it finally turned in the lock, the sound was hesitant, like metal waking from sleep. The air in the room shifted. No one spoke. The door creaked open to reveal not chaos, but precision. Everything inside had been arranged deliberately, almost like a private archive. Cardboard boxes stacked neatly and labeled in Roy's careful handwriting, manila envelopes tied with string, magnetic tape reels lined up on wooden shelves, a sealed black case resting in the corner. It was clear this wasn't an accident. It was a time capsule, preserved for a reason only Roy had understood. As the family began sorting through the shelves, one of Roy's sons noticed something odd about the back wall. The wood had a faint seam, a line almost invisible unless you knew where to look. When he pressed against it, the panel gave way, revealing a small hidden compartment. Inside was another box, smaller, locked again, but this time there was no key. They pried it open carefully, and what lay inside sent a chill through the room. There were old photographs, Roy standing beside a military aircraft, shaking hands with men in uniform, his expression unusually solemn. These weren't publicity shots or hee-haw promos. They were official, almost secretive. And beneath the photos was a single sealed envelope marked in shaky handwriting. "For my family, only when I'm gone." Inside, it was a cassette tape labeled simply, "Play Alone." No one knew what to expect, but everyone knew that once they pressed play, there would be no turning back. The tape and the confession. That night, when the house had grown still, the Clark family gathered in Roy's old music room. His banjos hung silently on the walls, a strange audience to what was about to happen. Barbara found one of Roy's old reel-to-reel tape decks still plugged in beneath a shelf, dust gathered thick across its metal frame. With trembling hands, she inserted the cassette labeled "Play Alone." For several seconds, there was only static, the faint hum of time passing through old tape. Then came his voice. It was older, slower, and unlike the cheerful tone they'd heard on television. "If you're hearing this," Roy began, "then I'm already gone. And there's something I need to say, something I never could when I was alive." His voice wavered between calm and sorrow. This wasn't a performance, it was a confession. Roy spoke of the price of fame, the way it demanded joy even when there was none left to give. "People want laughter," he said, "so you give it to them. But after the applause fades, all that's left is the echo." He admitted there were parts of his life he'd locked away, both in memory and behind that very door. "They saw the man on Hee Haw," he whispered, "but not the man who came home." Then his tone softened, almost tender. "There's a name you don't know," he said. "Ellie. She helped me through things I couldn't tell anyone. When the lights went out and the crowd was gone, Ellie was the only voice that kept me standing." He didn't explain who she was, not a friend, not a lover, only that she was the keeper of something he could never forgive himself for. And then came a line that froze everyone in the room. "I made a choice once," he said quietly, "and someone else paid for it." He paused for a long moment, his breath faint on the tape. "Music was how I survived it. Not applause, not the jokes. The music." The tape ran for about 25 minutes, his words circling around guilt, loss, and the feeling that his entire career had been built on covering up pain. "The closet," he said near the end, "wasn't about secrets. It was about survival." When the tape clicked off, no one moved. It felt as though Roy had been sitting there with them, his spirit still caught between confession and peace. That voice, full of regret but steady to the end, left them shaken. The man the world adored had just revealed a wound so deep it had shaped his every smile. But the story wasn't over, because tucked beneath that tape were stacks of letters, hundreds of them, and they would explain everything Roy had been trying to say. The letters and the shadow of Ellis Raymond. The following morning, Barbara and the children returned to the closet, still dazed from the night before. Beneath the reel-to-reel machine was a small wooden chest, unlocked but covered in dust. Inside, dozens of letters lay neatly organized in plastic sleeves, some written on hotel stationery, others on torn notebook paper. The name that appeared again and again was the same one from the tape. Ellie. No last name, no address, just Ellie. The earliest letters dated back to the 1960s. Some were short, fragments of thoughts, lines of comfort, quiet reassurances. Others stretched across pages, written in handwriting that shifted over time but always carried the same tone, intimate, cautious, secretive. In one letter, Ellie wrote, "You were right not to tell them. The world wouldn't understand. The stage would never forgive you." In another, she said, "Don't carry this alone. It wasn't your fault. We did what we thought was right." Roy's replies, kept among the same stack, revealed a man drowning in guilt. "I've built a life out of laughter," he wrote in one. "But inside, it still echoes. I still hear the tires. I still see his face." Those words struck Barbara like lightning. Tires. His face. She had never heard of any accident in Roy's past, no story that matched the depth of remorse she was reading. The family kept digging. Tucked inside the lining of an old guitar case was a small envelope sealed with red wax. Inside was a black and white photograph of a teenage boy holding a mandolin. On the back, in Roy's unmistakable handwriting, were 5 words: "If only I had driven." Underneath the photo was another letter, this one from Ellie. "He looked up to you. He forgave you. Why can't you forgive yourself?" The pieces were falling into place. A lost life, a crash, a guilt buried so deep it had consumed Roy from within. But who was the boy in the photograph? And who was Ellie, the mysterious woman who had carried his secrets for decades? The more they read, the clearer it became that Ellie was more than a friend. She was Roy's silent lifeline, the one person who knew what had really happened that night. The unreleased songs and the hidden war. At the bottom of the closet sat a black leather case, its edges worn smooth from time. The brass latches were stiff, as though untouched for decades. When Barbara finally forced them open, a faint smell of old tape filled the air. Inside were several reel-to-reel recordings, each labeled in Roy's slanted handwriting. But unlike his concert tapes or studio masters, these bore no familiar titles, only cryptic phrases: "The Other Side," "Wrong Stage," and one simply marked "Midnight." Curiosity won over hesitation. They threaded one of the tapes onto the deck and pressed play. After a low hum, Roy's voice emerged, fragile, stripped of the polish fans knew. He wasn't performing. He was confessing through song. No banjo flourishes, no laughter between verses, just a man and his guitar, speaking his truth in the only language he trusted. "I played the fool on the screen," he whispered between chords, "but the tears were always mine." Each song carried the same tone, heavy, deliberate, drenched in sorrow. One told the story of a rain-soaked Tennessee road and a drive that ended in tragedy. He never mentioned a crash outright, but the imagery was unmistakable. Headlights cutting through fog, a name left unspoken. Another song, "Shadow in the Mirror," described a man who could no longer look himself in the eye. "Every laugh I gave them," Roy sang, "stole a piece of me." It became painfully clear. These weren't songs for release or radio. They were private exorcisms, confessions set to melody. The family sat in stunned silence, realizing that while the world had celebrated his humor and warmth, his true self had been unraveling in secret. Even more haunting, several recordings were dated between 1970 and 1980, the very years Roy's career was at its highest peak. He was winning awards, hosting Hee Haw, selling out tours across America. And yet behind the curtain of success, he was pouring out pain into tapes no one was meant to hear. On one recording, his voice trembled as he muttered, "No one will ever hear this. But I had to get it out, or I'd drown." Then came the final tape, one without music, only Roy speaking into the microphone. "I kept these locked away," he said, "because I didn't want to ruin what people loved. They wanted smiles, and I gave them that. But this is who I really was." Then silence. Not static, not noise, just absolute stillness. It wasn't until they moved the case aside that they found something else underneath. A battered military briefcase, cold to the touch, marked with faint letters, U.S. Air Force. Roy Clark had never spoken of the military, but inside that case, another layer of his hidden life was about to unfold. The military files and the final envelope. The briefcase was heavier than it looked. When Barbara unlatched it, a chill passed through the room. Inside were documents stamped United States Air Force, personnel forms, mission logs, and a faded black and white photograph of a young Roy Clark standing beside a C-47 transport plane, a guitar slung over one shoulder. His face was grim, eyes hollow, nothing like the joyful entertainer America adored. The family was stunned. Roy had never mentioned military service, not in interviews, not in memoirs, not even to his closest friends. Yet these files proved otherwise. The dates placed him in the early 1950s during the Korean War. According to the logs written in his careful script, he hadn't been a combat soldier, but part of a morale unit flown near active battle zones to play music for troops. The entries detailed visits to Korea, Japan, and Guam. At first, the tone seemed routine: performance notes, names of songs, comments about the crowds. But deeper into the notebook, the pages grew darker. One entry was partly blacked out with ink. Played under blackout conditions. Enemy fire audible from East Ridge. Lost power midway. Another read, "Music kept them alive for one more night. At least, that's what they told me." Then a name appeared, circled in red. Ellis Raymond, gone. The room went still. Barbara recognized it instantly from the letters and the song lyrics. Ellis wasn't fiction. He was real. Among the papers was a folded list of names, musicians, soldiers, and technicians, and beside Ellis's name was a single note in Roy's handwriting. He shouldn't have been on that flight. Beneath the stack lay a folded American flag and a final envelope, yellowed, sealed with tape, marked by one word only: forgive. Barbara held it for a long time before opening it. Inside was a newspaper clipping dated 1968. 2 cars collide on wet Tennessee Road, 1 dead. The victim, Ellis Raymond, 23, a mandolin player from Nashville. The surviving driver was never identified. In the margin, Roy had written, "I should have been the one driving." Taped behind the clipping was a final handwritten note. The ink was shaky, the words broken. "We'd just finished the set. He said he was too tired, but I insisted we drive home. I let him take the wheel so I could rest. I woke up in the hospital. He never woke up at all." Tears welled in Barbara's eyes. It all made sense now. The guilt, the sleepless nights, the hidden songs. Ellis was the young musician who died that night, and Ellie, the mysterious correspondent, must have been someone tied to him. Perhaps a sister, a fiancée, maybe even his widow. Roy had spent a lifetime haunted by that loss, burying his confession behind the one place no one would look. When the family finally finished unpacking the closet, the house felt different. The same furniture, the same walls, but a new understanding of the man they'd loved. To the world, Roy Clark had been the face of Hee Haw, the symbol of laughter and light. But behind every grin, every banjo solo, was a man carrying a private war. Roy Clark's secret didn't destroy his legacy, it deepened it. His laughter was armor, his music a confession, his closet a sanctuary for the pain he never spoke aloud. The family decided to leave that door open, as a reminder that even the happiest souls may carry the heaviest burdens. Do you think Roy's family did the right thing by revealing his secret? Let us know in the comments. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like and subscribe so more people can hear the truth behind the legends we thought we knew.